Have you ever wondered where emotions like joy, jealousy, and anger come from? Let's dive into the fascinating world of neuroscience and cell biology to explore how the brain, neurotransmitters, and nervous system work together to create the feelings that define our daily lives. Emotions are a complex process that require communication throughout your body and brain. Much about how emotions are generated is still unknown. From what we do know, the central player when it comes to emotions is a core part of your brain called the limbic system. This area primarily includes the hypothalamus, thalamus, hippocampus, and the amygdala. The amygdala is the hub of emotion processing, where brain signals come together to create emotional responses. It works closely with different parts of the brain, like the hippocampus, which references past memories to regulate emotional reactions, and the hypothalamus, which converts emotions into physical reactions. Overall, using our experiences and senses, the amygdala helps us emotionally respond and make decisions in everyday situations. Now we know some key brain areas involved in emotional regulation, but how do these work? The brain is made up of tens of billions of specialized cells called neurons. When neurons become stimulated, they generate electrical signals called action potentials, which propagate down the axon of a neuron. Once it reaches the terminus, the action potential causes a change in voltage, which opens voltage-gated channels, allowing an influx of calcium. This initiates the release of neurotransmitters into the space between the neurons, the synaptic cleft. Neurotransmitters bind to receptors on another neuron's dendrites, triggering another action potential, which propagates down a string of neurons. This allows brain areas to communicate, allowing for responses such as hormone release. Hormones are chemical messengers that travel through the bloodstream to send signals to different parts of the body. Multiple hormones work together to play a big role in how we feel emotions like fear or anxiety. Let's take a closer look into the fear pathway. When we see something threatening, our eyes sends a signal that travels to the brain's relay station, the thalamus, then to the visual processing center, called the visual cortex. From there, it goes to the inferior temporal cortex, the object recognition center of the brain, and finally, the signal goes to the amygdala, which is the emotional alarm center of the brain. The central amygdala sends a signal to the hypothalamus, where corticotropin-releasing factor, CRF, is released. This acts on the anterior pituitary gland, causing it to release another hormone called the adrenocorticotropic hormone into the bloodstream. This hormone causes the adrenal glands to make and release a type of stress hormone called cortisol, as well as norepinephrine and epinephrine. These hormones are heavily responsible for feelings of stress, including the fight or flight response, a racing heart rate, sweating, and high blood pressure. While hormones play a large role in the physical symptoms of our emotions, they can also pertain to the psychological feelings of them as well. Have you ever wondered what love is, or how we form close social bonds? These are largely due to oxytocin, also called the love hormone. Oxytocin binds to receptors on dendrites of neurons in areas like the hypothalamus and amygdala. These receptors recognize oxytocin's unique structure, and upon binding stabilize a different shape of the receptor, activating a G protein. The activated G protein exchanges a molecule of GDP for GTP, a source of energy in other cellular processes, causing the dissociation of the three subunits of the G protein into two complexes. These complexes stimulate the activity of the protein phospholipase C, PLC. PLC converts a phosphatidylinosydyl 4,5-biphosphate, or PIP2, into a 1,2-diacylglycerol, or DAG, and an inositol triphosphate, IP3. IP3 acts on the cell's endoplasmic reticulum to release stored calcium into the cytosol. This excites the cell and can modulate action potentials, releasing further neurotransmitters. Meanwhile, the increase in calcium and the presence of DAG can cause a conformational change in a protein called protein kinase C, which is responsible for adding a phosphate group to many other proteins, modulating numerous pathways that may be implicated in emotions. Other neurotransmitters can also affect emotion, and most follow a cell signaling pathway using G protein coupled receptors, just like oxytocin. High levels of dopamine and serotonin are associated with feelings of pleasure and the reward system. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are associated with anger, fear, and anxiety. We've learned a lot about some areas of the brain behind our sensation of emotions, how the neurons send and receive signals to respond to stimuli, and the cellular pathways that hormones and neurotransmitters follow to make us feel different emotions. The complexities of the mechanisms involved in producing emotions is still being studied. Maybe you could be the one to unlock the secrets of emotions.